All right, so topic 4. This is kind of an interesting one to me. I'm not sure how you feel about it. We may have different opinions on this. Again, just to the viewing public who don't know how we set these up. We have no conversation whatsoever about. We give each other the topics and then we just say, right, we'll jump on and people can probably tell that we're freestyling this stuff. You know, some of the wild segments and stuff we come out on, the wild segues we make.
That's what makes it good.
That is, and it feels much more enjoyable to do. I just want to say as a sidebar. But yeah, this topic in particular, I think is an interesting one. Should the UFC start cross-promoting with other major promotions? I believe it is my turn to go first, I think, on this one.
It is.
All right, so again, there's so many different ways you can look at this. Sometimes these questions are deliberately loaded, but I'm going to talk purely as a fan here and not from the perspective of the UFC enhancing their business, which I also think, by the way, could be an element to it. If it was strictly about business, I probably would have a different answer, but as I've said many times on this channel, I don't really care about how much money the UFC is making. Now, I don't really watch as many regional promotions as I probably should, and that really is on my list of things to do this year. But I do watch every major organization, as you know, as you do yourself. You know, I watch like the KSWs, the Cage Warriors, One, Bellator, etc. As painful as it can be sometimes, I tend to try and absorb as much as I possibly can. But I think, like, you know, when I made that video talking about who has the best champions between like Bellator, PFL, and the UFC, I think it really accentuated my perspective on this. Like, as a purist and a general MMA fan, I would love to know at any given time who the best fighter is in the world in a particular weight class at a particular time. I'm somebody, if you saw that video, I'm somebody who, I think I covered, 8 or 9 champions. I can't remember what the exact number of it was.
I think it was 9.
But I think it was 9, yeah. So I didn't plan anything going into that video. I simply addressed it as sort of saying, hey, Bellator's got some good stuff too. And actually surprised myself going through it that I had several of their champions as potentially being better than the champions they have in the UFC. And I wasn't expecting that outcome.
Yeah.
It was, I'd say like, I can't remember specifically what the numbers were, but I could safely say it was at least half, which kind of illustrates my point completely. I do see champions in One and Bellator that are arguably the best right now from what I can see from just my viewpoint. And I was looking at Tapology the other day when I was making a list. And I give you an example. You're obviously fully aware of Patchy Mix and what an amazing fighter he is.
Absolutely.
Now, on the unofficial rankings, he is below Ricky Simon and Jonathan Martinez.
No.
Like, that to me, at worst, and I'm not even capping on this one, I would have him second at worst. Yeah. And I mean at worst. Like, if somebody said top 5, maybe I'd accept that, opinions and all that. But to have him behind Ricky Simon and Jonathan Martinez just because he is outside of the UFC is mental to me. So I want cross promotion as a fan, purely to say, you know what, this is who the best is right now. And the UFC will spout on about, from a business perspective, they don't want to do cross promotional cards because they don't want to elevate another brand. But just imagine what the business would be like if once a year you had an entire card, even if it was International Fight Week at the end of the year, whatever, where you had a card purely champion versus champion, every division, going all the way down the card from top to bottom. Are you telling me that wouldn't be the biggest thing of the year every year in terms of the eyeballs that would bring to this. If you could say, forget all the hype of UFC 300 and how they've messed that nonsense up, imagine being able to say every year you're going to get the Bellator flyweight champion, which a division they don't have right now, but I'll get to that later, versus the UFC flyweight champion. Like, and then have that at the end of the year as the last cherry to say, bam, this is who ended the year as the best in every single division. I don't see from a fan perspective that would be insane. And if you did it with somebody like One, imagine the demographic that you're bringing in.
Yep, it's true.
If you're doing a champion versus champion, if you're just a UFC and you're like, do you know what, I'm not doing anything with Bellator, but you went to One and you were like, let's do this. Like, the amount of eyeballs that would be on those cards, and then the crossover you'd get, the increase in fan base you'd get, would be insane.
That's true.
Again, I'm speaking idealistically here. I'm speaking as a fan. I would love to see the UFC cross promote. I would love to see it happen, because then, as fun as it is to sometimes have those debates of, oh, they're the best in the division, and you never get to really find out. It's just, sometimes it's nice to just be able to endlessly talk shit about who the best is.
It's true.
I want to know.
You know what?
It's never going to happen, but I want to know.
Yeah. I understand the trepidation from the UFC side, and you alluded to that when you said that you're speaking from the fans' perspective and not the UFC's perspective. And obviously, the fear is from the fact that, well, one, they've tried this before and it didn't work out. You remember when Chuck Liddell went into Pride and he was supposed to be representing the UFC, and what happened? He got knocked out. So.
And that did not look good for the UFC.
It didn't. Dana was like, never again. And that's kind of where we've left that. But I would argue that they can actually make this to where this is lucrative for everyone, no matter who wins, as long as the UFC doesn't lose every single fight. They have this thing, and I'm sure you've heard of it, called the UEFA Champions League. And in that league, they find out who is the best. And if you have, these people, these teams, or in this case, these fighters, to find out who is indeed the best at that time, you can have something that is monumental, that makes so much money. And I think that the UFC, Bellator, PFL, One would all benefit from having something like that, because after they have that, they go back to their individual leagues, and those championships still mean something. Now, you'll have, situations where people from the same gym are probably champions, or maybe people who are, almost related, a la Islam and Usman Nurmagomedov in the same division. They're not going to fight each other, but maybe they will, because of the gravity of that situation. Who knows? But I think that you can actually do that from a fan's perspective. This would be our Super Bowl. This would be massive. Absolutely. And I personally wouldn't do it every year. I would actually do it every other year to make it even more massive. But like a sort of a bicentennial World Cup or something. Yeah, that's what I would do. That would be sweet. I'd accept that. I'd do it every 4 years. I'd do it every decade if it had it. Well, maybe not every decade. That's going too far. I mean, I thought about every 4 years, but maybe every 2 years would be like kind of a happy medium. And you're catching people in their primes and whatnot. Yeah. And you can adequately prepare for it as well. And then that adds something to their resume. Because, I mean, just imagine if you looked at somebody's resume and they were like a 2-time champion of champions belt holder. Like, come on. Like, and it adds weight to the world. To the word world, or the moniker world champion. Yes. Like there's no disputing. Undeniable at that point. There's no disputing. And it doesn't have to be a competition. It's like you said, it doesn't have to be a competition between it. The pie is big enough for them all to eat. Yeah. Like it genuinely is. Especially in the case of the UFC doing this with One, because you're literally getting two massive coexisting but separate fan bases that would be instantly exposed to one another. It'd be huge. It would be huge. That would be massive. I think that should be something that they should really look into. And the UFC, they're not going to lose on this. And I'm not talking about not going to lose as far as fights. They're going to lose fights. Patchy Mix is the best in the world, in my opinion.
I believe.
But if you look at, the entirety of it, and you broke it down in that video, I do believe that the UFC has the best champions for the most part. But there's a challenge to be made, but I think that from a financial perspective, they would not lose because of all the advertising that's going to go into that, all of the star building that would go into that, and us as media, we wouldn't lose either because we have so much to cover, so much to look at. Like they should. Who do we need to talk to? Who do we need to talk to do that,
bro? The thing is, I genuinely believe that this won't happen as long as Dana's in charge. I think Dana is a big obstacle to this kind of thing happening.
True.
And I think there's a lot of things we'll lose when he goes, because as much as I think of the guy as a Satan, there's like, I don't know, I feel like he's a roadblock in front of a lot of things that could be amazing.
He is. I think that things will change when he leaves, but a lot of people,
I don't know if we'll ever get this.
A lot of people look at, individual fighters like Conor or Ronda or Brock as being the stars of the UFC. Dana White is the star of the UFC, and he always has been. He always has been, and until he leaves, he always will be. That's the star of the UFC. And I think that when he leaves, I think that Hunter is going to be the one to replace him. And I think that things will open up a little bit because Hunter is more open to business opportunities than Dana is.
And he hasn't burned a whole load of bridges as well.
True. I think things will change, and I think that some things will change for the worse, but for the most part, I think things will start to move forward a little bit when Hunter is in place. But
yeah,
we got a little bit of time before Hunter Campbell.
That's gonna be another question I need to add into the docket for next time. Who would make the best? I mean, it's not really a yeah or no question, or maybe it could be where it's like, would the UFC be better off without Dana White? I might chuck that one on the docket as well.
Yeah, so
we've got 2 already.
We got 2. Just need 3 more.
Things just unfold like that.